Well, we've covered one-step inequalities, two-step inequalities, so now, of course, we go to multi-step inequalities. So make sure you have your composition book out, and let's look at those last two flaps on that foldable that aren't filled in yet. So, on number 9, we have 12 times x minus 3 plus 2x is greater than 6. First thing we do is separate the two sides of our inequality. We look on the left side. The first thing we ask ourselves is there any distributive property? If there's distributive property, you always have to do that first. And I see distributive property right here. We have 12 times x, which would give us 12x, and then 12 times negative 3, which would give us a negative 36. Then we have plus 2x is greater than 6. Now we ask ourselves, can we combine any like terms? Well, I see 12x and 2x. 12x plus 2x would give us 14x minus 36 is greater than 6. Now what do we have to do? We have to add 36 to both sides because we want to get this term all by itself. So we add 36 to both sides. Now we have 14x is greater than 42. Now in order to get x by itself, we divide by 14 on both sides. And if memory serves me correctly, we would have x is greater than 42 divided by 14, I believe, is 3. So our answer then is x is greater than 3. Now for example 10, again, separate our two sides of our inequality. First thing we always look for is distributive property. And I see distributive property. First thing we do is bring down our x. We are going to have to distribute a negative 3. So we take negative 3 times x, which would give us a negative 3x. Then we take negative 3 times 2, which would give us negative 6, and that is less than 4. Now we ask ourselves, are there any like terms? I see 1x and negative 3x. 1 plus negative 3 would give us a negative 2x. Then we have minus 6 is less than 4. So now we have to get our term with x by itself. So since this is minus 6, we have to add 6 to both sides. Now we have a negative 2x is less than 10. Now in order to get x by itself, we have to divide by a negative 2. Since we are dividing by a negative on both sides, what do we have to remember to do? Flip the inequality symbol. So now we have that x is greater than 10 divided by negative 2 is negative 5. Now go to the second flap that is titled Multi-Step Inequalities. Here we have example 11. We start out by separating the two sides. We look on the left for any distributive property. And lo and behold, there is some. So we say 4 times 2, which would give us 8. 4 times a negative x would give us negative 4x, and it is less than or equal to. Now on the right hand side, we look to see if there's any distributive property, and there is. So we say 5 times x is 5x, and then we say 5 times negative 2, which would give us negative 10. Now we have variable on both sides. So we have to get all the variables on one side of the equation. We can either move the negative 4x or we can move the positive 5x. I always choose to move the negatives. So I'm going to say plus 4x on both sides. And this is going to move our x's over to one side. So now we have 8 is less than or equal to 9x minus 10. Now we've got to get our x term by itself. So since this is a negative 10, we have to add 10 to both sides. Now we have that 18 is less than or equal to 9x. Now, in order to get x by itself, we must divide by 9 on both sides. When we divide by 9 on both sides, we get 2 is less than or equal to x. Or another way to read it is x is greater than or equal to 2. And now we finally come to the last part of our foldable, example 12. When we separate the two sides, we look at the left side, see if there's any distributive property. Yes, there is. So we say 2 times 4, which is 8. Then we say 2 times negative x, which is a negative 2x. And that is less than 3x minus 7. So now we have variables on both sides, so we have to get them to one side. Again, I told you that I always move the negative, so since this is a negative 2x, we're going to add 2x to both sides. Why do you think I add the negative all the time instead of doing the positive? Anybody have any reasons you think so? If you think you know, let me know. So this gives us 8 is less than 5x minus 7. Now we have to get the x term by itself. Since this is a negative 7, we have to add 7 to both sides. So now we have 15 is less than 5x. Now we got to get x by itself. So now we divide both sides by 5. So we end up with 3 is less than x. If we read it backwards, it would say x is greater than 3. We made it. We filled it all in. Yay!